Yeah, I'd like to talk about Tailwind in terms of the fundamentals. Let's start there. And by the way, I appreciate you like sharing how you got into Tailwind because and again, for anyone listening, it's super important and helpful to actually know CSS, be good at CSS, find the pain points with CSS, right? And then move to Tailwind, or maybe not move to Tailwind, but adopt Tailwind. Because Tailwind, I love how you said it, Shruti. Tailwind is CSS.
It is.
In the name, Tailwind CSS. So what are some pain points then with CSS that Tailwind CSS can solve?
Oh, there are so many. So first one is the context switching, right? You're fully into the flow. You're writing the HTML, and I'm somebody who doesn't write all the HTML and then go to the style sheet and start styling it. I do it like I add one paragraph, I style it, I add a span tag, maybe style it, I add a link, I add a button. So for me, it goes hand in hand. So for someone like me, I can't keep switching and then, okay, what do I name this again? I already have a card large or,
Right.
I already have a profile image, but this is a different profile image. So what do I call it? And you lose a few seconds there and you've forgotten what you were doing. So two things, context switching and naming. Both are avoided. Those are like the major 2 points that I would want. And then there are some things like cross-browser compatibility. So there are a few things where you need to add these, mods and, things like that, which it probably works in your browser. So you wouldn't add it and you just move on, right? You don't probably test it in different browsers. So when you test, it's probably too late and you don't know why something is not working. For some of the properties that need these, Tailwind adds them automatically. So you can simply add that utility class and Tailwind takes care of the cross-browser compatibility for it. And then...
That's so cool.
Yeah. What are the pain points? Those are the main ones. And of course, some Tailwind properties and values get too verbose and it's difficult to remember them. You have to go into the documentation and search what it is. So for example, like this, justify center or just place content center. It's quite huge. And then you don't know which property that is, things like that. But with Tailwind and with the auto completion, that there are these IntelliSense tools that are available. You just start typing and you know which class applies. So these are some pain points.
Yeah.
Another one which
Awesome.
I really loved. Should I? Sure. Yeah.
Of course, this is
Yeah. One last thing I just remembered now is everybody starts with a normalize CSS or a reset.css, right? And you don't have to do that in Tailwind because it's included in the Preflight. Even if I'm not using Tailwind classes, I'm tempted to just take that Preflight and add it. If I have to show a demo in regular CSS sometimes, I just wish there was a way to, normalize it in all the browsers. Yeah, that's another thing.
That's so cool. So just the reset alone, you'd say, is worth the value. And I agree. It's kind of sad that user agents, aka browsers, just ship a bunch of assumptions that they think looks good, which often it doesn't, right? Like the user agent margin, I really have a hard time with this. Like who put that? Why is that there? And I get it, legacy reasons, but if you're building a modern browser for the modern web, why enforce those opinions, Okay, so there's the reset you mentioned. It helps not just you, it helps all the developers with context switching. That is stepping between sort of document structure with HTML and styles. It puts them all in one place with class names, and naming. And with naming, man, I remember so much pain with, especially in teams, around like, how do we name things? Do we use BEM? You remember BEM?
Yes.
Block element modifier, gosh. And there was all of these discussions. And honestly, like the conventions around coming up with class names often cost teams that I've worked on before Tailwind like weeks, because it just like it's something you want to, quote unquote get right, and then you want it to be, again, quote unquote future proof. There's all these startup terms, but now that Tailwind exists, I hear you, and I think that's so cool that the discussion is just gone, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Straight up, you're saving so many weeks. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask you about two things in Tailwind that, oh, I love the horn. There was a car horn. It's so cool. Anyway, I want to ask you about two things in Tailwind that people criticize. One is the length of class names. I've seen some people go absolutely bananas, and like the class name with word wrap, the string of class names like occupies the entire screen. You've seen the screenshots, right?
Yeah.
With people like cursing Tailwind. Is that actually representative of like work that people do, or is this just created to cause drama?
No, some elements, by some, I mean literally probably two elements in your entire project might actually need those many class names. Yes, it does have. It's not just added for the sake of, yeah, some people still do that. But yes, there are some cases when you need to add those many with word wrap. Yeah, it might go up to 3 to 4 lines. But that's very, very, very rare. Like so rare that it's a component in itself, or probably you never use it again. It's in one place in your entire project. You just put that in a different file. Don't look at it again. You don't have to look at it again, right? That's the thing. That's the debate that always happens. Like, oh my God, this HTML is not readable. It doesn't have to be readable because there's a very rare chance that you'll actually look at it again. And if you want to edit that, in regular CSS, that would be even longer. That class name with, if you add all those properties in regular CSS, that's so long. Now imagine scanning your CSS file. It's the same thing, right? Imagine having to search, go to the class name and go there, and your CSS starts bloating so much that I have wasted hours and hours trying to find that exact element that I've styled. I remember the property that I added. I don't remember what I called it or something like that. And then, you end up searching which additional class that I added, which is overriding, my style. And it solves that problem. And yeah, so if it's not readable, there are plugins for it. You can use inline fold plugin. And it just puts 3 dots. It just puts an ellipsis in the place of the class name. Yeah, a lot of people don't know this. Only when you hover over it, that appears. So use that if that's so bothering you so much.
We'll put links to that in the show notes. I think that's so. I didn't see, again, Shruti. Like I talked to you, it's been like 15 minutes. I already learned something. That's so cool. I'm so happy you're doing this. So the what is it? Inline fold plugin, right? That can solve it. What I heard also from your explanation there is a trade-off. The trade-off is between, okay, do you want a really long class name that you maybe don't have to look at much? Or do you want to like wrestle with the cascade? Because in CSS you have you said like, oh, what class is overriding what? But if you're using Tailwind, even if your class name is extremely long, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, but you're using the VS Code extension, perhaps, then any like rules that fight with each other. For example, flex, grid, block. Like if you have these 3 classes, it will give you a yellow underline. It's like actually these cancel each other out. So okay, so I think that's a strong argument, right? You don't have to worry about the cascade. And yes, it gets long, but it sounds like the trade-off is worth it because in terms of like mental load, it's much easier than navigating the cascade. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that. And adding to it, people who see it for the first time, like if I hadn't got to my 3rd project, like I said, it's when I was, going from my 3rd to 4th is when I started getting used to it. If I had seen this long a class name at that point, I would have had second thoughts. Oh my God, if this is how my project is going to get, do I really, do I want to go ahead? But now, my brain automatically ignores those. It doesn't bother you much after you get used to it. So
yeah,